Debbie from Roots Coaching here. Welcome to my next DebTalk. Today is all good news. We're talking about the happy chemicals that we have in our body that can mitigate the ongoing ravages of cortisol and unmanaged stress in our body. So this follows on from the last talk that I did, which was on the biology of stress. And we spoke about how adrenaline and cortisol is there to keep us alive, keep us out of harm's way, out of danger. We also said that the unmanaged toll of stress and prolonged and chronic cortisol in our bodies, a state in which most of us do live, is going to absolutely create illness and may very well kill us in the end. But the good news is that to our two main stress hormones, we've got 4 happy chemicals that we can access. And we can intentionally work on making sure that those happy chemicals are flooding our bodies as much as possible. Because guess what? Specifically with serotonin and with dopamine, and I'll get to those in a minute, when serotonin and dopamine are high in our brains, cortisol is low. It's like a seesaw. So when cortisol is high, serotonin and dopamine are low. So we can intentionally look at how we can manage our lives to access these happy chemicals. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. Let's look at the first two, serotonin and dopamine. Serotonin and dopamine are both neurotransmitters. What does that mean? Well, very simply put, our neurons in our brain don't actually touch. It's not one long neuron and messages just get sent around the superhighway. It doesn't work like that. You have a synaptic gap that sits between the two neurons, and in order for one message to go from one neuron to the next, we need a fluid neurotransmitter. The two that I'm going to talk about today is serotonin and dopamine. So when the message is created in the one neuron, in order to get it to the next, it releases that message with its neurotransmitter. Now, serotonin is in our body for mood. It is one of the biggest indicators of mood. When we're feeling really low, when we're feeling really de-energized, we're probably not sleeping well, that's a dip in serotonin. When that is prolonged and we go into weeks, into months of losing interest in the stuff that we love to do, the things that we used to enjoy doing, we lose interest in that. We don't feel any joyful moments in our lives. That could indicate a drop in serotonin. Dopamine. Dopamine fires in the reward center of the brain. That means that when you've done something that you are really proud of, you get a kick from it. Now, dopamine is an interesting neurotransmitter because, yes, it fires in the reward center of the brain, but we also need to find new activities to keep that dopamine going because it works on the principle of diminishing returns. When we anticipate that something is going to taste good, that chocolate cake is going to really taste good, our dopamine levels are not going to be as high as the first time we ever taste a piece of delicious chocolate cake. So that means that we have to keep ourselves evolving in activities that stimulate that dopamine. Dopamine also helps us concentrate. And you know, when you get into that flow where time is passing and you're working and you're enjoying what you're doing, that's when the dopamine is helping you to focus, concentrate, keep you in doing what you're doing. Oxytocin, the love chemical, that's what people call it, the love hormone. Oxytocin is there for bonding. It helps us feel connected to other people. The first shot of oxytocin you would ever have received was the moment you were born. Baby gets flooded with oxytocin, and so does mom. Why? Well, mom and baby need to bond. So that's why they each get a dose of oxytocin. Oxytocin is that hormone that is pumping when you have coffee with a really good friend and you've loved your time with that person. And oxytocin, when you with family and people that you really enjoy, it lifts your mood, it lifts your spirit. Really important hormone to get. The next one is endorphins. Yeah, the painkiller. Very, very important. It is as powerful as morphine. And we often get that from exercise. But ever heard of the runner's high? I've experienced it, where I finished a race and I've done it so well and I've done so well in the race that I actually could carry on going. My body is vaguely sore and I know it's going to be sore the next day, but the endorphins are keeping me going. I've probably got also the dopamine because I'm feeling rewarded, accomplished. Serotonin is probably pumping because I have been out, as it happens, in the sun, running, exercising. So those are the roles of those 4 happy chemicals. So what's the secret to getting those happy chemicals? Well, this is where some of you are going to think, oh, you're kidding me. And during the week, I was talking to a client and I said to them, this is how you get these happy chemicals. And he says, wait a minute. So basically, you're just telling me to be a grown-up. Actually, yes. So serotonin and dopamine, we can actually get those from food. And there's huge overlaps with the type of food that are going to facilitate the production of serotonin and dopamine. And guess what it is? Your fatty fish. It is, and also your avos. It is fresh vegetables. Broccoli, remember I said? Yes, when we're stressed, we want broccoli, but it's all your fresh vegetables. It is eggs, dairy, good quality protein or soya, nuts, legumes, whole grains. It's not neuroscience. It is logical. The next thing is exercise. I find this one difficult, especially in lockdown when I'm here in my apartment and I'm busy working. And oh my gosh, it's just so much easier to reach over for a glass of wine at the end of a working day than to get out on the road and go for a walk or get into my car and go to gym. I used to love exercise so much, and I'm now trying to get myself even back into exercising. The mind loves exercise. I also found it quite meditative. When I used to do my running, I would not think of very much during that run other than not being hit by a car, not falling into a pothole. It really is just one foot in front of the other, making sure that I'm breathing. And it's amazing how much happens in your subconscious whilst you're not really actively thinking about stuff. And very often I'd get back from a run and think, that's the solution. That's what I need to do. And it would all be there for me. In terms of exercise and moving around, I now have a watch. Yes, I'm late to the gate. I am on that bell curve of uptake. I am late uptake person. That's just the way I am. I'm never the first person to run out and go and get stuff. But it was interesting for me because yesterday I was sitting and working and this thing kept buzzing. And when I worked out what it was buzzing me for, it was that I'd been sitting consecutively for 3 hours without moving. So now what I do is when it buzzed, and yesterday I was able to, I got up, took a walk around and I came back and sat down. It is incredible. Just something so simple like that. How it just changed my ability to focus and get my work out. It was amazing. So try it. Use technology. What we need to make sure that we do is that we are engaged in meaningful activities. Now that could be work. Remember I said when you're in that flow state, the dopamine is pumping. It means that we're stretched just that little bit. And it's not overwhelming and we're enjoying it. The time is passing. That is so healthy for us. So meaningful activities, yes, can be work. It can be hobbies. I used to paint furniture for hours and hours and hours on end. And not so good for my sleep. But often I would finish a piece of furniture and it would be 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to go to bed now. But it's that sense of accomplishment. You're absorbed in what you are doing. And the last one is people, being social. When we are feeling stressed, very often we don't want to be around people. Well, that's my go-to, is just to lock myself away. I'm going to go and climb into my bed and I'm not getting out of my bed. But remember, we need that oxytocin. We need to connect. We need to know where we belong. It forms part of our sense of grounding. It's really important. So have that coffee with a friend. In fact, a client of mine was saying to me last week that they were too stressed to go to dinner. They're not going to go to dinner. They're actually just going to push through. It's sister's birthday. He'll deal with the fallout from the family in the days to come, but he's just going to push through and get his work done. I said to him, no, you're not. Go to that birthday. Even if you don't stay the entire duration of dinner, go, but be present. And this is again when I talk about that intentional working on gaining those happy chemicals. In order for you to access your oxytocin, you need to be present with the people that you're with. Don't be there thinking about, worrying about, oh my gosh, I'm not getting my work done. That's just going to up your cortisol and throw everything back out again. So that mindfulness of where I am now, I have that opportunity to engage with people. I'm going to get my oxytocin flooding my brain, and it's going to help me bring down the cortisol. He gave me feedback a few days later, and he did go to the dinner. And he said it was incredible because he came home. Within an hour and a half, he was done. His work was done. Everything that he needed to do was done. So there's very practical things to do. Remember, serotonin, eat properly, get into the sunshine, go into nature. Dopamine, eat properly, do activities that are going to stretch you, that you're going to enjoy. Your oxytocin, be with people. Your endorphins, go for that walk. Do some exercise. And I'm not saying you need to become a gym buddy now overnight, but I'm saying, like me, just get on the road, go for a walk around. A lot of us live in complexes. Walk around your complex or do a couple of stretches. It's really, really important. So, no earth-shattering news here. It's all about common sense. And yes, it's about being a grown-up. And it's about looking after ourselves. There is so much evidence to suggest that cortisol is raised when we drink fizzy drinks, when we overindulge in wine or whatever alcohol. When we eat highly processed food, we also again put pressure on our systems. We don't need to do that. We're also not giving in what we need in terms of nutrients so that we can have this healthy life. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you've got some ideas, and always please be in touch. Thank you. Bye.